All right, welcome back. We're going to talk a little bit today, or this section, on the fundamentals of office space. All right, office space typically includes general office buildings, medical office buildings. It can also include a portion of the research and development for office buildings, like labs, institutionals like schools, and governmental buildings. You also have executive office suites, which are those, by the hour, by the day, and then office condos, which is a really big thing in Louisville, Kentucky, by the way. Hasn't really caught on here, where offices buy a condo in a strip rather than leasing it from a tenant. They actually buy the condo, but it looks like an office building, and they own their space. So it's just like a condo concept, except the use is basically office space. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about the categories and the classifications of office buildings. Now, as I told you before, office buildings are probably the softest market right now. They always seem to be the most luxurious because typically the front office of a company is the one where people dress nice, they speak well, it's always has nice decor. So this is what I think most people think about when they think they're going into commercial, that they're going to go sell or rent space where it's, dark wood and mahogany and big office desks, like an attorney would be. And I think that's what most people tend to think about in the commercial world. So unfortunately, that's not always the case. So let's talk about office buildings. And traditionally, there are three styles of office buildings that we're going to talk about. A Class A office building. Class A is the highest quality space on the market. It's considered Class A. All right. These spaces are generally newly construction. They've been outfitted with the top-of-the-line fixtures and amenities, and this is the new smart building that we're talking about. I would say that if you pictured downtown Indianapolis, all of the high-rise buildings, or say like the 130th and 40th and about 116th through 140th on Meridian, all of those glass high-rise buildings, those are going to be the Class A office space. All right. Usually they're very aesthetically pleasing. They are in high visible locations like the Central Business District, high areas of population, Keystone at the Crossing, things like that. They're normally maintained by the high-end reputable property management companies that keep them looking very sharp. Full-time janitors cleaning 1 through 8 floors, and they start back over again. I've said it a couple different times, and it's typically true. Height is typically another characteristic of a Class A office building. So that is the true high-rise office space that you see. They also tend to have higher ceilings inside. The lobbies tend to be superior in the way they're decked out. Elevators are, well, they actually have elevators. Some office buildings is just stairs, but that attributes to the fact that it's multiple heights or multiple stories. Glass facades, very common. So it's very avant-garde looking. It's very well kept. They're actually typically higher than the average city rent. And the tenant concessions are rare. Why? Because it's where everybody wants to be. You get a law firm, and law firms, let's use them as an example. They're very picky about how they appear. Appearance is a lot for them. For some reason, the average person wants to trust a lawyer that is sitting behind a mahogany desk in a 3-piece suit with a nice receptionist, when you could have just as smart as an attorney sitting on a 5-gallon pickle bucket, but they want that look. And because of that, they're willing to pay for it. And because there's a number of people willing to pay for it, landlords don't have to give concessions. In the residential world, think about that. Everybody's trying to buy a bank-owned home, and you got people that are wanting the bank to pay closing costs. The bank's going to say, well, no way, because I've got 5 other people that are willing to make me an offer without me giving any concessions, because this is a very low-priced or sought-after property. Same concept for Class A office space. Very well maintained. People want that space, and because of that, they can charge a premium for it. And there's very little concessions, meaning very little money given towards the tenant's improvement or the tenant build out. There's very little free rent. You know, I just did a deal the other day where we struck a deal. He signed a 3-year lease. He got the first 3 months free because he had to get in there and move in. But the place had been sitting vacant for like 4 years. So the landlord saw this as his best chance. That ain't going to happen in a Class A office space. I mean, you go downtown, very rarely is there any vacancy in the AUL building because everybody wants to be there. And because of that, that makes the tenant or the landlord not have to give up any concessioncy. It's completely sought after. It's the most well-known, all the largest firms in the city. These are the ones where you're going to see all your banking, accounting, and law firms. You know, everybody that has to maintain that quote-unquote visual representation is going to want to be inside of this. Now, right below that, you've got the Class B property. Class B property is probably 80% of the population. You got the 10%, that's the Class A, 80% is Class B, and then obviously you're going to see what's coming up. But Class B is the average office space. They're not as high quality as fixtures. The architecture isn't the top of the line. The lobbies aren't Class A. They're generally very nice buildings that are fully functional. They're just not, you know, the top of the line. And it may be because of the location. It could be because of the building systems that are old or outdated. They were new when they were put in, 10 years ago, 12 years ago. Now they're not. The property managers now are the next level down. They're still good managers. Therefore, Class B tends to be average market rent. Because they don't have that outstanding lobby or that glass facade, they have to just charge the average market, all right? Most of your Class B buildings are less than 4 stories. 4 seems to be the magic number. So 2-story building, 3-story, 4-story, those are your Class B buildings. And they're often found in the outskirts of the financial district. They're often found in the suburbs or in newly burgeoning areas. And I would say probably like some of the buildings you see in Greenwood where they're newer, but Greenwood's not as big as a financial district or a business district as, say, Indianapolis. So you've got a Class B building. Now, there's another consideration that separates A from B, and that's age. And I think I just touched on it. A lot of times Class B buildings are a little older. They've experienced a little minimal deterioration or breakdown. Some of those Class B buildings might have been Class A buildings 10 years ago. And that's typically the life progression. A building gets built in 1990 and it was top of the line for 1990. It maybe didn't have internet connections where the new building that just got built last week does. So because you now have this new building with new technologies, new smart, new thermostats, new wireless systems built throughout, defines the new standard for Class A. The old 1990 building that was Class A then is now downgraded to a Class B. And it's 20 years old. So the facade's starting to show a little wear. Maybe the parking lot's got some issues in it. So it becomes more apparent, it goes from A down to B. And potentially, if you're in this business long enough, some of the stuff that we see as Class A now, who knows, in the year 2040 might be Class B. And then obviously the last one that we're going to talk about is Class C. Class C is the poorest quality structures. They tend to be located in the least desirable office. They typically need major renovations, and they're usually more than 20 years old. Because of all of these things, they command a lower rental rate. They attract tenants that are more smaller in their scope of personnel and a lot newer in companies. For instance, Bob's Engine office, that's not even a good place because that wouldn't be in an office building. Bob's Accounting is not going to be in the same building that you see Arthur Anderson, which I'm really dating myself because Arthur Anderson's not even around. But I meant I had to follow through with that analogy. You get where I'm going with. Arthur Anderson, if you remember them in the heyday, anybody here still remember them? Yeah, plenty of you guys. See, they're going to be in the Class A office space. Bob's Accounting might be Class C. Newer company, stuff like that. One of the other things that Class C tend to get are people that are not truly or are actually more destination oriented. So in other words, I am going to go see my accountant Bob, and I know where he's going, so I'm going there. Rather than I'm just driving around and I see this accountant and I'll go in and talk to him. You know, downtown, the business, the financial district, those are the kinds of people driving by and saying, oh yes, I need a banker or I need an attorney or something like that. A lot of times Class C buildings are the ones that are sold for rehabilitation and redevelopment opportunities and repairs. It's very easy for you to take a Class C building and move it to a Class A. I'm sorry, misspoke, skip back. I added two things together. You're going to take a Class C and move it to a Class B building. You know, you're going to fix some of the repairs, you're going to change some of it. To go to a Class A, you are probably not going to do without leveling the building and redeveloping the whole thing. And even then, you still got issues of Class C buildings probably in the wrong location to become a Class A building. You know, I don't care what you do to an office building in Mars Hill. For those of you in the Indianapolis area, that is the southwest corner. Not a bad area, it's just not Keystone at the Crossing. So no matter what you do to your building in Mars Hill, it's probably not going to be a Class A, even if you redevelop it, all right? Now, when dealing with office space, there's two other terms that usually come up. And remember, we're just trying to keep this basic. So you've got to understand there's this term that listing agents use called rentable square feet versus usable square feet, all right? Usable square feet is the actual space you occupy from wall to wall. Usable square feet does not include any of the common areas like the lobbies, the restrooms, the stairwells, storage rooms, any of the shared hallways. Unless you're leasing the entire floor, then yeah, that may be true, okay? The other thing is rentable square feet is the usable square feet plus any of the portion that you share with someone else, all right? So shared space can be anything like outside space, lobbies, restrooms, hallways. As a tenant in a commercial space, you pay for a portion of the shared space, and thus your monthly rent is always calculated on rentable square face, plus tax. Have no idea. As your monthly rent is usually calculated on rentable square footage. So remember, if you are dealing with a tenant rep getting office space, you've got to talk about, are we paying rent on some of the hallway, some of the common area, or is it just the usable square foot? So I've got an office that's 45 or 40 by 25, that's 1,000 square feet. Am I paying rent based on the usable square footage of 1,000, or do I have more? And they may say, no, your load may be like 1,200 square feet because you're sharing a portion of the common area and the hallway, which you share with the guy across the hall. You know, you come down the east wing, you got my door and his door, so you got to split that cost of the hallway with the other guy. So in essence, you're renting 1,200 square feet. Oh, well, you know, that could be important that I need to understand that. So keep this in mind when you're a selling agent or a tenant rep to make sure that what you're paying for or what you're renting. Common area, there's a thing called a load factor. And generally a load factor is the amount between the rentable and the usable. That was what I was just explaining. I've got a hallway and common space, and I have to pay for that. There is a load factor, and it's usually 10 to 15% is about where you want to keep it. So I've got usable of 1,000 square feet. 15% of that would be 150. So I'm paying for another 150 of the common area. That would be a load factor. So you got to make sure you keep that in mind when dealing with office space. And that's virtually the big things you need to understand about the fundamentals of office space. All right? All right, let's take a small break. We'll be right back.